What's a movie that teaches a really bad lesson? Any movie where a couch or car door is used as cover in a firefight, that's concealment really. A .22 will go through a car door or a couch. A car isn't even cover like in John Wick or anything. Rifle rounds will zip right through unless it's a solid engine block hit. I watched Cinema Paradiso recently and the part went like this. Girl breaks up with guy. Guy wants girl back. Guy decides way to get girl back is to stand outside her house and stare up at her bedroom window. He fully does this for what seems like months in the montage. Eventually she realizes what an amazing, beautiful and romantic gesture is and takes him back and loves him more than ever. Only bit about that film I didn't like. On a side note, can we talk about how Thomas O'Malley from the Aristocats is one of the only good step-parents in Disney movies? I know Pongo and Perdita were also great adoptive parents, but Thomas originally was interested because he thought Duchess was unattached, and barely blinked when he found out she had kids. In any other story he would have been a bad guy, or had to come to love the kids. Why don't we ever get that anymore? The problem with Cats is they didn't leave it alone. Every single Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, regardless of theoretical time period, is set in weird camp gay 80s hell. You cannot modernize them, or even go for realism, or you break the fundamental weave of the show. You can't make Tugger a modern performer instead of a hair metal band lead singer, and you certainly can't get rid of the big 80s hair, ear headpieces, because they make the cat heads look proportionate and not like bad swim caps. I haven't really figured out how my wife reconciles these two positions. She loves to skip our respective family Christmas gatherings and instead take a nice Caribbean vacation. She loves Christmas with the Cranks, where we basically watch a couple like us get their dream crushed by assholes. The whole Twilight series, Edward and Jacob are both controlling pricks at best, and Bella is too spineless to put them in their place. My love dumped me, so I'm going to engage in reckless behavior. My love is dead, so I'm going to commit suicide by cop. My love is in a relationship with someone else, so I'm going to try to force myself on her so she will change her mind. If you want some professional input about how bad the relationships are in Twilight, check out Cinema Therapy on YouTube. There was a Reddit thread where BDSM people complained how people wanted to try it because they liked the movie, book. One couple got a whip butt when the wife whipped her husband in the back so hard that it left a huge gash. People equate pain to pleasure and humiliation to live, but BDSM requires a lot of setup and has more work done to make it work. I'm still amazed that so many people actually watched this movie. A friend of mine loved the book so much that she Amazon gifted the first ebook to me. We're both married, hetero women with kids, when she was halfway through the second. I just didn't get it. The first book was so poorly written and just plain offensive that even skipping around to the sex scenes was disappointing. I must admit that the fuss my friend was making made me start to wonder about her romantic life with her husband, who was my husband's co-worker and very best friend. Not a good path to start down. Yep, now that I'm thinking about the lines I started thinking along, it's no wonder that nothing about it was appealing to me, anyway. It's sad that too many romance movies try to make it seem like stalking is okay when it isn't. They also make unexpected kisses during an argument out to be normal or romantic, but I'm pretty sure if a guy was arguing with his girlfriend, or close female friend, and decided he was gonna kiss her out of nowhere, then that's gonna land him a sexual assault charge, and make the problems worse. A lot of romance movies are sickening when you really think about them. Revenge of the Nerds can't even claim it's satirical. The Nerds are just as bad, if not worse, than the Jocks. Yes, the Jocks started it by running a few pigs through their party. What the Nerds do is far worse, but really only at the expense of the easier targets, their women. Other than the humility of losing in what is effectively a few competitions they cheat at, along with some tigers bombed in their jock straps, the Lambdas don't really get revenge on the Jocks. They take it out on their women. First they spy on them in the nude. Then they distribute the nude photos to the school. Finally Lewis rapes Betty Childs. All because like 4 girlfriends help the jocks with the pics, and the idea that it's okay because Lewis is good in bed is beyond disturbing. She doesn't just accept it, she decides she's in love with a nerd. That movie was written by some serious incels. The Sex and the City movie and series. Big leaves Carrie time and time again over the years. This teaches that if you stick around your toxic relationship, the man might finally change and commit to you. Even after 10 years. With that said, I love Satk. Watching it in my 20s I saw Carrie finally get her man. Watching it in my 30s I cringe and just wish Carrie would have stayed with Aiden. My ex used to adore this show because of Character 5, New York and all the fashion highlights. It was her go-to when she was slumping in her life and needed to binge on something. We did this together once and I was strongly in the Carrie is the worst fucking human being camp and she was super defensive. Fast forward a few years and she's just finished watching it again and rang me the other week literally yelling down the phone, "You were right, Carrie is a piece of shit." So yeah, once the glitz and glamour of the New York social scene wears off, it's pretty easy to see that Carrie and Charlotte are the 2 worst characters on the show. Samantha is vapid, but she owns her sexuality and promiscuity well, and Miranda is misguided, but she owns her decision to put her career ahead of her desire for relationships and family. Carrie throwing the Big Mac at Big because he doesn't want to prioritize her after a long week at work is pretty much the realization point that she's a self-indulgent asshole that can't put others before her, which is like season 2. So yeah, it's a long road to the end from there. Other toxic lessons include, spend all your money on designer goods to the point where you're 50 and only have $900 to your name. What you wear and what you look like is what matters most. Be elitist and classist even though you're 2 steps away from homelessness yourself. Leave the best guy you ever had because THDMondas THWR on S-Hop. Keep smoking no matter the consequences. I could go on but I won't. The scene that keeps playing in my head from Satk isn't Carrie and Big at all. It's the guy that poops with the door open in Miranda's apartment. He's a great guy blah blah, but he pees with the door open. So instead of asking him to close the door, Miranda, who is a lawyer and uses her words professionally every day, hints at this and tries to expand her horizons by also pee with the door open. Instead of asking him, or telling him, or you now, just shutting the door on him. This makes me stupid angry. Going further, so many long-running shows where the some parent main cast ends up in on and off relationships the entire time. It's strange enough that these people stay friends for years after what they do to each other, let alone start families. It definitely reaches into nice guy, friend zone territory, especially in comedies. Supposedly the reason April and Andy get married so quickly in Parks and Rec was because the writers wanted to avoid that trope. Grease. You date a high school asshole, and his equally loser, no good friends treat you like shit. What do? Oh, that's right, you become hopelessly devoted to him, and no matter how shitty he treats you, you come back to him time after time. After the shit with Cha-Cha, Sandy should have known that he was no good for her and that her friends, I'm looking at you, Frenchie, are useless cunts and not true friends. I mean, it was one summer, Sandy. How hung was he that you kept coming back? Edit. Guys. Danny is human. He has a bad side and a good side. Don't we all? He can become a better person, and in the end we all saw him wearing the cheer coat, or whatever that was, that signified his new, better self. My problem is with Sandy for being weak. You don't go back to a guy who treats you like that hoping he would change. He needs to prove himself before you begin to think about going back. You don't throw your experience out the window just because a guy says the few words you want to hear, wears a new jacket, and sings a duet with you. Baby, you are scalding hot with that black thing you call pants. He would have said anything, throwing aside your experience. That's the opposite of wisdom. Without the songs, it's a dark story about a girl who's trying to fit in and everybody loves her only once there's a cigarette to bum. Sandys of the world, you deserve better. Don't believe words, believe deeds. Your comment doesn't cover the half of it. I've only finished S12 by now, and holy shit, this narrative is terrible. A. Do not encourage teens to commit suicide as a retributive justice shtick, then put it in a greater light than the fucking sun. Imagine portraying a teen who feels powerless. Later said teen commits suicide, which immediately allows them to get a karmic victory over their foes, and then saying suicide is bad, kids. B. Said retributive justice by suicide includes, yet is not limited to, convincing an innocent kid, Clay, that he is responsible for the death of his friend, causing him to contemplate and come very close to suicide. Later, another teen, who was named in the tapes, Alex, attempts suicide. Jessica, who Hannah again singles out as the reason for her suicide, is then told by a cruel tape, which again, claims she is responsible for death, that she has been sexually assaulted. Imagine a third party revealing they were present for your rape, which you didn't know about, said party being unable to stop it for some reason, and then said party taking that event as their own, saying it was a reason for their suicide. Fuck. See, thing is, not once are we shown Hannah dealing with mental illness, though 90% of suicide victims have those. This means Hannah is completely lucid and aware of what she is doing and the terrible consequences of it. This is then viewed as a victory. D. Another teen, Tyler, gets raped, and receives no help. This is meant to show how male victims of sexual assault also receive issues with getting consequences for what happened to them. Said male victim of assault then attacks the school with the gun. Hooray for messaging. E. The act of school shooting itself, which portrays the shooter as a victim and as a person who is at no fault here, and that this is a logical outcome of what happened to them, is bad in two ways. The first is this isn't true. Shooters are at a great many times the bullies, influenced by terrible ideologies. Secondly, this puts the victims of shootings at fault. If they paid more attention and helped Tyler, they wouldn't fucking die. F. Having a suicide scene, despite being warned by officials, could encourage teens to commit the act themselves. I'm not trying to say either Hannah, Jessica, Alex or Tyler didn't go through absolute shit, just that the framing of the narrative is downright horrible and harmful to children and teens. The show hides behind starting a conversation while being a sensationalist piece of crap. Lots and lots of romantic movies. Maybe you can just walk up and kiss someone like in The Notebook if you're Ryan Gosling. In reality, though, get consent first. FFS. Any action movie where someone disarms someone who has a knife. Don't try that. If possible, run the fuck away. 50 Shades of Grey. Shit writing aside, that's not how you do BDSM, relationships or anything in between. It's not romantic. It's creepy. Why in the fuck did anyone like that movie? The Notebook is particularly egregious. Gosling's character is emotionally abusive and probably a psychopath. He gets a first date by threatening to commit suicide. He sends a letter to a girl every day for a year without any replies. And when she's hesitant about leaving her fiancé at the end, he just screams at her that if she walks away he'll hate her forever. That character is a crazy person and they play him up as if he's an incredibly romantic figure. Twilight is the story of a teenager afraid of growing old using an emotionally stunted teenage immortal. Vampires cannot age physically or mentally from when they are turned. An entire plot point is made that vampire children are not allowed because of that, as a ticket to her own immortality, while also pressuring him for sex when he isn't comfortable due to older age morals. When said boyfriend tries to leave for her own safety, she uses the werewolf who's always loved her as an emotional crutch. Later, genetic fuckery causing him to have his thoughts and mind rewritten against his will to be whatever a newborn child will ever want, as his free will and love and attractions are forever stolen from him. But it's okay cause now the love triangle is solved. 40 Days and 40 Nights. It's about a girl who's a total slut but she decides to challenge herself not to have sex for 40 days. She's doing fine until her friend makes a website about it and a being pool starts. Suddenly everyone is trying to get her in bed. Meanwhile she meets this really great guy who teaches her that love doesn't have to involve sex. You can have a great time and even be intimate without fucking. Still, she's so horny, you guys. At the end of the 40 days, she literally handcuffs herself to a bed to keep from letting anyone fuck her. The pool is up to huge amounts of money now. Then her ex-boyfriend walks in. He sees her tied up, so he rapes her. He claims the prize money and literally rides off into the sunset. The slutty girl is upset because her awesome new boyfriend might not accept her now that she cheated on him by being raped, but it turns out he's okay with it. Oh wait, oops, I accidentally reversed the genders of all those characters. I ran a youth group at a fairly progressive church for a year out of college. The previous leader used to show the high school group 40 days and 40 nights to kick off Lent. I put an end to that. At the time, it was because I was an emotionally repressed prude who didn't think that anyone should be talking about sex. 18 years of life and 2 years of therapy later, I'm still glad I made that call. For completely different reasons. You want to teach positive sexuality? 40 days and 40 nights ain't it? My main gripe with Paw Patrol is, fucking arrest Mayor Humdinger. They have, on multiple occasions, caught him red-handed committing major crimes, or endangering Adventure Bay, and they always just let him go at the end. This man is a sociopath. He literally can't empathize or think of the good of anyone except himself. Get him off the streets. The way I see it, the movie isn't saying you should blindly trust people, it's saying people should learn to trust each other. Everyone who comes with her, tricks her because they felt they needed to in order to survive. In the end, it was only when everyone got out of their misgivings and trusted each other that they were able to save the day. If they continued to not trust each other, then the entire land would have been doomed. You know, there's some potential for a great film in there. It was just never realized. And everyone likes to vilify Chris Pratt's character, and whilst he did an absolutely abhorrent thing, he's only human. The conflicting drive for survival and crippling loneliness is only compounded by the sheer boredom and monotony he would experience. An absolute breakdown of his mental state and the relief and desperation for approval when she wakes up. This movie could have been an interesting look into the loss of a man's sanity through sheer loneliness and the understanding that his entire life will be spent floating through the void of space. It would then move into an exploration of, is he a bad guy, or just a poor, desperate man that made a horrible decision? Fuck. Maybe even go down the path that he hates himself for what he did. He essentially took a life. How does he deal with that after the fact? I don't think that Jennifer Lawrence should be the one put on trial here. If you were taken to space where there was literally nowhere and no one else, you have three choices. Accept it and make the best of it, fight it and be miserable for the rest of your meaningless life, or just fucking die. Chris Pratt has obviously gone off the deep end, and I agree that it's an absolutely awful thing to do, but I don't think the message applies to anyone that is currently living on our planet of billions of people. Wonder Woman 1984. The link is to an in-depth video essay called How to Harm Your Audience, and part 2 covers the toxic moral, as the video calls it, better than I can edit. Yeah, the whole possessed and raped a guy story. What gets under my skin is that if the genders were flipped, that movie would have been blasted to oblivion instead of promoted with admittedly awesome trailer music. Raya and the Last Dragon. We need to do a better job of teaching kids that trust is something that needs to be earned. Of course, you shouldn't assume everyone is out to get you, but telling little kids that they should never listen to their instincts and that people who have betrayed their trust in the past actually have their best interests at heart is just downright dangerous. I actually do like this movie, but I hate the lesson of the Lego movie, which is that you're a bad parent if you enjoy your own hobbies that don't involve your children. Like this dad, who probably has some stressful, soul-sucking job, spends his own money and free time on his nice calming hobby of Lego building, but he's the bad guy for asking his kid not to mess with them. As a mom, fuck that. I bought you your own toys. I don't tell you how to have fun with them. I'm allowed to enjoy things my own way too. Honestly, I never saw the dad as a bad guy. Sure, President Business is supposed to be a Lego version of Ferrell's character, but Business is completely exaggerated. That other than sharing an actor, I never saw them as the same person. Business was a bad guy. Dad was just a guy who had his own stresses and did not like his kids ruining the one thing that brought him calm and stability. Dad was just an ad.